Well, I guess WWE backstage can't keep any secrets now, can they? And I guess that is what it's meant to do because Ryan Satin, who's known for breaking news online through Pro Wrestling Sheet, I think, and other sites, works with WWE, mostly Fox, on WWE Backstage, where he breaks the news about certain things that are occurring behind the scenes. And he recently, as of last night, broke the news that, well, basically it's something we pretty much knew about already. Word had been spread about it, and this individual tried to debunk those rumors and reports. But basically, it seems, according to Ryan Satin, who reported it last night on WWE Backstage, John Morrison is returning to WWE very soon. Now, according to what the report is, and I guess you got to watch the clip and all that, it's reported by Ryan Satin and other sources, but mostly last night on WWE Backstage, that Morrison signed a multi-year contract with the company. Now, this is obviously news that a lot of people pretty much knew had already been revealed, I should say. They already knew that John was probably heading back to WWE after being away for several years. And honestly, people may say that it's probably the best decision he's made. The only question some people have, like let's say Alex, Dalyxman, Dalyxman's wrestling reviews, or just Alex, and several others asking and wondering, is now that Morrison is coming back, to WWE, the question is, what brand should he be on? What show should he be part of? And we're going to answer that question. So, with John Morrison coming back, the question that, like I said, everybody has, including one person that's happy he's back, and that's Dalyxman, Alex of Dalyxman's Wrestling Reviews and Just Alex, as well as Jeff Siegel, the Schleg Daddy of OTRSCentral and Schleg Daddy TV, and many others, are happy to hear about. The question is, what brand is he going to go to? Now, obviously, because as talented as John is, trying to get my words out there correctly, but as talented as John is, a lot of people would say that the best brand he should go to, the destination should be very obvious, the answer basically should be very obvious is what I'm saying. And basically a lot of people feel that Morrison would be better fit for NXT. And I don't blame them. NXT is more about the in-ring presentation. They basically focus more on, the matches and how they connect story-wise with what happens on the outside. They know how to give people the opportunity to kind of be themselves, give them bullet points, help them develop their character and all that. So yeah, NXT would be probably one of the best solutions and destinations for Morrison to go to. Because a lot of people will point out that you have basically an opportunity to put matches together that nobody ever thought they would see. You could put matches together that nobody ever thought they would see. Some people could point out and say John Morrison, Adam Cole, John Morrison, Roderick Strong, John Morrison, Johnny Gargano, John Morrison, Tommaso Ciampa, John Morrison, Finn Balor, John Morrison, Matt Riddle. Well, maybe we've seen that on the independents, but you get the idea. John Morrison, Keith Lee, which again we probably saw on the independents, but it'd be new to WWE eyes and NXT eyes. So, you have a whole peripheral list of superstars and wrestlers on the NXT brand that you could get never before seen matches out of, dream matches out of, with a John Morrison going there. I mean, when you had Drew McIntyre come back, where did they send him? What brand did they send him to right off the bat? NXT. And we got matches there between him and superstars that are now on Raw along with him, that are now on SmackDown and still are in NXT as we speak. So you had matches, you had dream matchups and scenarios lined up for McIntyre when he showed up to NXT. And after he had that time in NXT, even when he became the NXT champion, what did they do? Even despite his injury, the next step, obviously, injury or not, was the main roster. He was going to get a short stay in NXT, like I said, which he did. And injury or not, he was going to head to the main roster, with at least the accomplishment of being the NXT champion under his belt. So now the question is, will NXT be the destination of John Morrison? And will John Morrison, end up going that same route? Will he end up NXT champion during a brief time with the brand before either going to Raw or SmackDown? That's the question anybody would have to ask and wonder. So NXT, it looks like an obvious choice, an obvious place for him to go. I'm not denying that. I'm not saying it, he shouldn't be NXT bound. Heck, he might change his name to Johnny NXT or Johnny Next just to fit in. Take that little gimmick that he's created where he basically takes on the name of the promotion he's, part of, or at least some kind of acknowledgement to the region or territory he's a part of as part of his last name. Because, we saw that when he was in Lucha Underground and when he was part of AAA, he was Johnny Mundo. We saw that when he went to Impact Wrestling, he was Johnny Impact. When he would do the independents, like would say Defy Wrestling up in Oregon, he would be Johnny Defy. All kinds of, he would basically change his name up in all kinds of ways to match up with the promotion or the company he was part of. Sometimes he'd just go by his real name, John Heineken. So NXT being the destination for John Morrison, I'm not against it, and maybe, like I said, he'll go and become Johnny NXT or Johnny Next. Who knows? But then again, like I was saying, we know how Vince McMahon is. And Vince McMahon basically wants to have enough star power when it comes to his main brands as he looks at them, Raw and SmackDown. And especially with SmackDown being on Fox, like I said, with SmackDown being on Fox, you can't tell me that he won't see someone like John Morrison and say, yeah, we need to bring this guy to SmackDown, make him part of SmackDown. And that could happen too. He could automatically go back to the main roster and probably end up on SmackDown. And you could have some matches there you never thought you'd see. And you can have a renewal of rivalries, if not one main rivalry, that fans would actually get behind, especially now that both have kind of come a long ways and gone different paths that they did to become who they are currently. I mean, the matchups that we could see, sorry about that, but the matches we could see could be matches we've never seen before. Like, I talk about with NXT, you got a peripheral of stars you could get there, but what about SmackDown? If, they decide, okay, John, you're going to SmackDown right off the bat. They could put Morrison against Shinsuke Nakamura. Think about the scenario. Shinsuke can throw out a challenge a la, courtesy of Sami Zayn to put up the Intercontinental Championship against anybody. Next thing you know, you hear John Morrison's music hit. Out comes Morrison. And right there on Fox for the Intercontinental Championship, Morrison Nakamura. Not only would it be a pleasant surprise because, one, you'd kind of get the idea, for the fans, even though they know he was coming back, it would be a pleasant surprise for them because they know at least what brand he's going to be part of. and potentially what his first program feud, what his first rivalry and feud will be upon return. So that could be an interesting scenario. You could have matchups with the likes of a Chad Gable, which, aka Shorty G, as some people, or as he's called in WWE. You could have a matchup there. Morrison Gable. Heck, how about, believe it or not, Morrison Daniel Bryan, or Morrison. How about Morrison and Roman Reigns? Or Morrison and Bray Wyatt, the Fiend Bray Wyatt. Those are matchups people would love to see, John be put in. Those are matchups and rivalries, feuds, if you will. People would love to see Morrison become involved in, because these are matchups that, in a sense, we kind of seen before with Morrison, but only briefly, because he left a little afterwards, when a lot of these people showed up. So, yeah, can you imagine Morrison against the Fiend Bray Wyatt? Morrison against this version of Daniel Bryan, or Morrison against Shorty G, aka, Chad Gable, against Roman Reigns, against Shinsuke Nakamura, against, believe it or not, Dolph Ziggler. He's faced Dolph before, but how about that rivalry? Because they've had a rivalry too, being renewed. Or how about Robert Roode? That's a rivalry that could happen, or that's a matchup we could see occur. King Corbin could be another. The list goes on pretty much as a star power. John Morrison against Mustafa Ali. How about that? That's something you could see happening. So just like NXT, SmackDown has the opportunity for some matchups to occur that we've never seen before. Some that might be a renewal of old rivalries that we have seen, but some that we haven't. But then you also have something else that plays into this. Like I said earlier, you have a rivalry / feud that we've seen before, but we've never really broke the top surface with. I mean, there were moments that it was going to get there, but we never fully got that opportunity, that chance to see Morrison, to see this rivalry and feud Morrison was a part of, really be elevated to the levels that it should be. And that's with The Miz. Imagine the dynamic between those two, renewing their rivalry and feud. Again, like I said earlier, after seeing how far they've come since the last time Morrison was in the company, and the paths they took to become who they are today. Imagine that rivalry being renewed with these, like I said, with these versions, these takes on their characters, on their personalities. Imagine that rivalry, that feud being reignited on SmackDown, and possibly given the opportunity to go higher than it has before, now that they have a much bigger platform with Fox as the home of SmackDown for the next several years. But then again, we may not have to worry about that, because let's say they want to keep Miz babyface, because it looks like they want to go there, make him that tweener babyface. What if you have Morrison come back, and maybe you have a tag team go out and issue a challenge to anybody? Maybe, The Miz is, let's say you do a Miz segment, a Miz TV segment. Like I said, let's say you do a Miz TV segment and he's interviewing the Revival, and they get up in his face and say, you try finding a partner and we'll face you later tonight in a matchup. And then Miz comes out, Revival thinks he didn't find a partner. He points to the back. Next thing you hear, John Morrison music. Next thing you know, in here is John Morrison's music play. And out comes Morrison, and you have a reuniting. You have a reuniting of the Dirt Sheet duo, Miz and Morrison. But these are completely different versions than what they were years ago. Like I said, these are completely different Like I said, these are completely different versions than they were years ago, reuniting to face the Revival. And the Revival, as much as people may not like it, puts them over, especially if they're probably going to be leaving. Like I said, especially if they're going to be leaving, according to what some people are hoping, what if you have the Revival put over Miz and Morrison? Or maybe you have the New Day just out of the heck with it, because if you have rumors going around and there might be a heel turn in the future for them, you have them decide to open up a challenge to anybody for the tag team titles. Miz comes out and says, I'll challenge you, I've got a partner. And then later on that night, possibly in a main event situation or a co-main event situation, you have the New Day come out, you have Miz come out, and then he, again, just like I said earlier, with the Revival, they think, you have the New Day doing the who's your partner, and next thing you know, you hear Morrison's music hit. There you go. And what a way for him to come back. You could have the Dirt Sheet Duo, this new and improved version of them, go over the New Day and become the tag team champions of SmackDown. There you go. I mean, here's the thing. These are great scenarios for Morrison to be part of. Feuds, rivalries, when it comes to SmackDown, great scenarios. But what about Raw? Now the question is, what if he goes to Raw? That's a good one. Well, what if Morrison goes to Raw? That's a good question. Well, again, like NXT and SmackDown, you have a peripheral of superstars he can go up against. He's probably faced them on the independents and during his time in WWE before. But like him, there are some superstars that are completely different than what they were previously. Like, let's say you bring Morrison to Raw, who can you program him against? Oh, I know. How about Drew McIntyre? Two guys that went down similar paths, come back, they're better than ever, they're completely different, they changed up a little bit of the styles and the personalities. There you go. Or how about you have him feud against AJ Styles, be a mystery partner for Ricochet? That's a good idea. I don't think we've seen Morrison and Styles on the independents. Ricochet and Morrison we've seen in Lucha Underground when Ricochet was Prince Puma. Like I said, we've seen it before when Ricochet was Prince Puma in Lucha Underground. So that's a good scenario. Morrison and Ricochet as a team, or even rivals. There you go. Morrison and what's that guy's name? Humberto Carrillo, the New Mexican star there. That could be something that happens. Morrison Mysterio, we've seen that before in WWE, but not this, and we've seen it somewhat in Lucha Underground, but these are completely different versions of them. There you go. Morrison, you could have Morrison against Brock Lesnar, if that's something people would like to see. That could be something. Or heck, you have Morrison against Seth Rollins. There you go. That's something people would like to see there. Seth Rollins, Morrison against Owens. I mean, there's a lot of matchups and rivalries and feuds you could program Morrison into if he goes to Raw. How about Morrison, Samoa Joe, once Joe comes back on the injured list? I'm just saying. The opportunities open themselves up. And you got a whole good roster on Raw for this to happen with. Morrison, Aleister Black, Morrison, Buddy Murphy, again, there's a peripheral of star power, up and coming stars and all that you can program Morrison up against upon his return if you decide to put him on Raw. So, a lot of opportunities await, people there. I mean, you could put Morrison against Mysterio for the U.S. title, Morrison against, Brock for the WWE Championship. You can have Morrison team up with, let's say, Ricochet and challenge for the Raw tag titles. You can have Ricochet and Morrison team up against the Viking Raiders for the tag titles. Again, the opportunities open themselves up. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah, but I'll say this. Raw has the opportunities presented to Morrison there, but not as much as SmackDown and NXT. So in closing, I think obviously out of the 3 brands and that he could end up on, I think the 2 top choices are NXT and SmackDown. Those are the best ones to me. I mean, Raw, if they want to do it that way, that's fine, but I think SmackDown and NXT are the 2 best destinations, in my opinion, brand-wise, that you could put John Morrison on, because again, you have so many opportunities for new rivalries, new matchups, renewed rivalries, especially with the direction certain superstars have gone in the years past. You got the opportunities, you got better opportunities with those 2 brands for Morrison to be on than Raw. So I think out of the 3, the 2 best choices are SmackDown and NXT. But what brand do you think John Morrison will end up on upon his return to WWE? Let me know down below. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, and I will talk to y'all later.